How's it going, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Geek Chewns podcast, a show that talks about how geek culture inspires and shapes people's lives. And today's people is Mr. Randy McIntyre, otherwise known as MacSplicer on YouTube. How are you doing, Randy?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
So let the people know, who is MacSplicer?
MacSplicer is what I would say is like my online identity when it comes to fighting games, and it's basically it. I think of myself as kind of like not split personalities, but like I have two separate identities. Is you got MacSplicer, who is basically if you see that name online,
Yeah.
prepare for like a savage online fighting game player. And then if you see the name like Randy McIntyre, that's more of like my professional sense of where I review video games or, do stuff more professional, suit and tie. But
Okay.
Max Splicer is like my online, I guess, identity.
Okay. So it's like your brand. It's your
Sort of,
it's your
yeah.
brand. Do you write under MacSplicer or do you write under Randy McIntyre?
Well, because my website is called Max Splicer,
Yeah.
I write it under Max Splicer, but I try to, if I'm online and I'm playing fighting games, I would think I'm a little bit a different person, just because I'm a little more free. I'm a little more
Mm,
myself.
mm.
Whereas when I write and I have to be a little more PC about things, not so much PC, but a little more, just kind of tighten it up. That's when I kind of just chill out for a second and then write
Mm,
and do it
mm,
professional sense. And
mm.
then when I get back to fighting games, I get back to myself.
What kind of stuff do you write?
I do a lot of video game content, so reviews, if it's news that I'm interested about, mostly fighting game news. And then I'll do like one-offs as far as like features. Like I did a Maple Story feature, which is like an online MMORPG that I used to play back in the day. And then I did the like a Patreon segment, what I thought about the whole system of Patreon, and whatever I think is interesting for me to write that is somewhere within the video game sphere, I'll do it.
And why do you gravitate more towards fighting games?
Uh, I think it's just the competitive nature in me. I used to play a lot of sports as a kid, and
Mm,
with sports, there's a certain you have both camaraderie and then you have like a competitive nature of like of individualism depending on which sport you're playing. But as you grow older, you can't just go. I have a 9 to 5. I have a dog, so he has to go outside. So I can't just go
mm,
outside and play basketball or whatever. So fighting games, they're compact because I can play them inside. Obviously, if I have online, I can play
mm,
online. And then it kind of sparked up back like that nature of it's just me versus that guy or me versus her, and it's I really like competition, and I think fighting games bring it out about as good as a game like tennis or like mixed martial arts or boxing or whatever, except without the physical aspect of it. But I think as far as like the meta of like the mental game, I think it's on par.
mm.
I really like that about fighting games.
Yeah, no, I've had discussions with people on this podcast before about specifically how like uncompetitive I am, and that's why I don't like fighting games or sports or esports.
Mhm.
So I have been like telling people that I do need to get someone like you on here, so you could at least explain to me like some bits of esports and like why
Yeah,
it's like blowing up stuff. But we'll get to it later.
sure.
First, we'll get to our usual questions. Question number one: what was your first interaction with what we would now refer to as geek culture? What was that first thing that you remember?
First thing, I would probably be like Dragon Ball Z, watching Dragon Ball Z as a kid, and I really liked that. I thought it was cool. I used to watch obviously Cartoon Network, and then I never made the kind of like I couldn't differentiate between cartoons, like American animated cartoons, and then like anime, which I watched like Dragon Ball Z or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever. I just thought they were all the same thing. But for some reason, I gravitated to like Dragon Ball Z and all that stuff. So um, I just watched that ever since. And then as I've grown older, I started saying, hey, this stuff is actually not the same. And because it has like a layer to it with narrative instead of just, you know, like Ed and Eddie jokes, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, anime is very special to a lot of people who
Yeah.
understand what it is. But to some people, it's just like a bunch of flashing colors on the screen.
Yeah,
At least I think that's
basically.
how my father thinks of it.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you draw from any, or, I don't know, role models or anything for your everyday life from geek culture? Are there any specific characters that you try to, model after?
Um, no, not so much because they're in a different realm of
Mm,
fantasy, but
mm,
I do like the fact that you have certain characters that have interesting paths instead of just being kind of, the regular, I don't know, protagonist that um is overpowered or whatever, and stuff like that. But I don't know, I as of recently, I think it's because I've just grown older. I kind of have been detached from anime. I don't know why. It's just because maybe because I have more stuff going on. But I found myself, at least in the last year, reading more manga because I can't dedicate the time to just watch.
mm.
So I'll pick and choose and I'll read whatever I want. And as long as the character is somewhat, you know, mature and doesn't fall into like those type of tropes that a lot of like anime characters, fall into, as far as like the overly zealous or overly dramatic about things. And that's really what I like, is it's a little more grounded, a little more mature, and then I'll start reading that. Yeah.
Okay, so what type of stuff are you reading or did read over the past few years?
Um, I read, well, I really liked Akamega Kill. I liked that in I watched the series back when it came out. I think it was
Mm,
like 3 years ago. Um, and then I read it last year, and I thought like the manga version of it was a lot better because it didn't really censor, not so much like the violent acts, but it didn't censor the actual narrative of what is going on as far as politics with like the evil empire and the rebellion and all that stuff. So I like that. And then I like the fact that it was unapologetic about how things are, where I don't want to spoil, anybody, but
yeah, no, don't spoil. I
yeah,
haven't seen it yet. It's on my to-do list and it's been on there for like 2 years, but I
yeah.
haven't.
So I highly recommend watching it because
Mm,
I think it stays true to like the message that it's trying to convey, whether you like it or not. So I appreciate the fact that they had a vision and they went with it instead of going with what they think fans would like. So
mm. Okay. Yeah, definitely manga is definitely like a shorter way of getting through the story. It's also, yeah,
yeah,
it's much more contained. I feel like I've had discussion many times with other anime fans, but like especially like ongoing animes, they are so like packed with all of this unnecessary like fluff and stuff.
yeah,
Like it's getting really tiring, and I think that's one of the reasons why like I stopped watching like Dragon Ball Super, and like haven't even touched like the new like Naruto series Boruto, because like
uh,
I know what's going to happen. Like it's inevitable that there's just going to be a whole bunch of nonsense in there, and
yeah,
I don't necessarily have the time for that type of thing. Maybe when I retire one day, I'll just like buy a bunch of
yeah,
like buy a bunch of like anime DVDs or whatever type of
mhm,
media we have in those
yeah,
days. So do you
yeah. We
do?
got things to do.
There's a lot to do, and yeah, I'm an old guy now, so I have to start thinking about like actually making money so I can buy these things one day.
I know. I don't know how people do it. Like I don't even have a family. I just have a dog, and that's, really
Mm,
time consuming. So like I
mm,
don't know how people find time to have like a regular job and then still watch, a couple episodes a night or whatever. It's like I don't know. If you have other hobbies, especially, or if you have, other, activities you like doing, I guess maybe if you put anime or manga at the top and then you dedicate time for that. But I like it, but not enough to put it up on that pedestal.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you've got to choose some fights, and
Yep.
decide where to put your time and where to put your money. And like, for me, like, I discussed this with Noelle the other day, P fangirl or fangirl, the P is silent apparently. Um, and like we go through like cycles of what we like, because I can't. I can't get like super stuck into one thing for more than I think 6 months. So like, I think
Okay.
I have like maybe 6 months to 12 month cycles where I go deep into specific types of geekdoms. So right now I'm not into watching anime or reading manga. I'm not even that much into gaming at the moment because gaming is really expensive and I have no money. Like,
Yeah,
um,
I've been there.
yeah, so what I was doing recently is Dungeons and Dragons, but Dungeons and Dragons is like time consuming, especially if you're a dungeon master, because you have to plan out the game for everybody.
Yeah,
So right now my geekdom is actually YouTube. So
nice.
everything I do is actually like trying to find out more about YouTube and like online content and stuff like that, because it's free. Because you can learn about it on YouTube, like,
Yeah.
and it's like you can just sit on your couch and like watch stuff. But yeah, probably I'll probably get back into anime next again, or gaming. There's so much stuff I need to catch up on. Things like
Yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn and like, yo man, there's probably like a whole year of things I'm
Uh,
behind on. What other genres of video games do you like besides fighting games?
I like RPGs a lot. Like I like Western RPGs, but I think I like Japanese RPGs more.
Mm,
Mostly because of I'm used to them. I've played them. You
mm,
know what to expect. And then the storytelling is always, unless it's like a Tales game, which kind of the story is always the same. Uh, for Japanese RPGs, stories are usually a little bit different. They have, for the most part, interesting characters. I really like the Persona series or, um, whatever else is out there. But again, because I get so consumed with fighting games, I'll play a little bit, and
mm,
then RPGs are like, especially Japanese RPGs, they're like at
mm.
least 20 hours long. So for me to dedicate 20 hours to one game and not play fighting games is like very tough for me. So
Yeah,
I would have to play it in chunks, which is, what I've done with like I played like I Am Setsuna, if you're familiar with that
I'm
game.
familiar, yeah, but I haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
So
So I've played that, and I reviewed that game, and I remember when I finished the review, it took me 16 hours, but I think it was a 16-hour game, took me like 3 weeks to play because I just played it in little chunks.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you play those slowly. I don't think I've ever played a JRPG like slowly though. I usually like
No,
just like sink a whole weekend into it, or like a
yeah.
holiday week.
Mhm.
So what was the first like? When did you first realize that fighting games was something that you would stick to for the long haul? What were some of the first fighting games you played, and what were the ones that you realized that okay, this is my thing now?
Um, well, you know what, you kind of touched on it, where how we have kind of like these sequences where we go up and down with
Mm,
like anime or manga. That's kind of like been my activity with fighting games. Is I started when I was really young. I played King of Fighters and like Fatal Fury. But then I don't know what happened. I think I got into like MMORPGs when I was like 11 or 12, and then I played that. And then I stopped playing games as a whole throughout high school because I was more into like sports and outdoor activities. And
mm,
then when I got to college, I kind of slowly got back into it, but I had a roommate who was a big fan of like Mortal Kombat, and I've been out of fighting games for a while. Like I haven't played fighting games since I don't know, maybe I was like 9.
mm,
And he was super into like Mortal Kombat. That it was Mortal Kombat 9 that was out when we were roommates, and I would play with him, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then it kind of sparked up something in me. I was like, man, yeah, I remember this. I remember playing, this type of stuff. And then I don't know if you're familiar, the Persona 4 series spun
mm.
off and made a fighting game called Persona 4 Arena.
Arena, yeah, I
And
remember that. Yeah.
so that was in 2012. And so I just finished Persona 4 Golden on PlayStation Vita. And me not even knowing that Persona 4 Arena was a fighting game, I thought it was just more Persona 4. So I was like, yeah,
Mm,
I'll get it. So I got it, and then I turned out to be a fighting game. So I was like, well, I'm just going to play for the story because I thought it was more Persona 4, kind of like the continuation of Golden. But then, so like I would play the story, and then I was like, well, what am I doing? I'm not playing the game. I'm just reading text. So I'll actually play it. And then what happened was my friend, who's or my roommate, challenged me, and he's a Mortal Kombat player, and he's never touched this game ever. And I've been playing this game for the story for the last 2 weeks, right? So I should have some sort of heads up. And he's like, I want to play. Let's play, versus. And so I was like, okay, we can play like a first to three. So I play, and I kind of know a couple moves with one character, and he's never touched the game, and he just absolutely smokes me. Like I don't even stand a chance.
Mm.
So I was so mad. I was like, how does this happen? Well, it's because he had that fighting game prowess, right? So if you know a fighting game, you kind of learn fundamentals through one fighting
Mm.
game. While the system might not be the same, there are certain fundamentals like certain spacing, knowing how to punish certain things if you're blocking, making sure nobody jumps on you for free, so you challenge. And so he was just using fundamentals without even playing the game and absolutely destroying me. And that's when I was like, all right, I got to take this more seriously because I can't have get destroyed by a guy who doesn't even play the game.
Mm.
And that's when I started practicing Persona 4 Arena, and it took me a while, even though that game is fairly easy with regards to fighting games. It took me a while to get somewhat decent, and then I went online and I lost and I lost, and eventually I got better. And then the sequel to that game, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, came out, and that's when things really started picking up. So I already had like my fundamentals from Arena, and I started getting a little more in depth as far as like the actual like metagame of what the game is actually about, like how to
Mm.
win without maybe using high tier characters or whatever, like easy ways to win, like button mashing or auto combos or stuff like that, like actually
Mm.
knowing how to play fighting games. And I played Persona 4 Arena throughout the whole life cycle. It was like 3 years where the game was actually, people were playing it.
Mm.
And that's when I started getting into like Street Fighter 4 and Tekken 6, Tekken Tag Tournament, a little bit of Guilty Gear and King of Fighters. And now I can play, for the most part, because now I'm kind of like my roommate. So I can play any fighting game now and be somewhat decent. Like I could probably beat anybody who doesn't play
Mm.
fighting games just because I
Mm.
have that prowess.
The
And
fundamentals, yeah. Okay.
yeah, and I
So,
kind of never look back.
so if somebody, let's say somebody came up to you today and said, "Okay, I want to start my journey, like maybe a 12-year-old. I want to be an esports star one day, playing the latest Street Fighter." What do you tell them to practice or learn on their first like journey going through?
Well, if they want to be an esports star, I would say don't play fighting games. Play like,
Okay.
Dota.
Yeah, but if
Because
they want specifically to play fighting games.
um this is just my opinion, and there's
Mm.
certainly a divide right now, at least in my eyes, and in the fighting game community, which is what we call like the FGC.
Mm.
Um, and it all started with, I guess it started in 2013 when Capcom made Capcom Pro Tour and Capcom Cup, which is basically their esports circuit,
Mm.
with Street Fighter 4 or the later stages of Ultra Street Fighter 4. And what happened was, because Capcom and Street Fighter 4 had such a great monetary success with that game, it allowed him to do the circuit, right? And it put Street Fighter 4 on such a higher pedestal than it already was, because it was already the number one fighting game out there.
Mm.
That money and sponsors started coming in, and it was great, right? From 2013 to about 2015, to the tail end of Capcom Cup, which was like the beginning of, or the end of 2015. I think fighting games were at its highest as far as um, Capcom was succeeding with Street Fighter 4, and then every other game saw an increase because Street Fighter 4 was so popular. So people were automatically looking for other avenues like
Mm.
Guilty Gear or Persona, Tekken, right? So, um, but what happened was, with the partnership with Sony and Street Fighter, Capcom, um, I think was not a mistake, because Street Fighter 5 wouldn't be a thing if not for Sony's money. Um, but what happened was it became esports, right? And actual
Esports
esports. And if
first,
you,
yeah.
yeah, and if you know anything about fighting games,
That's the sense I got from it. Because
yeah,
for me, like I was totally uninterested by Street Fighter Five, like, and like
you're not alone.
when it was announced, like you could just sense that it, like, for me who grew up like playing Street Fighter like two, um,
Hmm.
and I played quite a bit of Street Fighter Four as well. And then when Street Fighter Five was announced, it just seemed like it just seemed like it wasn't meant for me from like any sort of like nostalgia point of view, as like,
Yeah.
a 90s kid or whatever. It just seemed like, okay, this is for people who want to compete, you know. That's the sense I got from it. And yeah.
Yeah, sort of. This is like like I was saying, there's a divide right now
Mm,
between what the fighting game community kind of really wants and what the fighting game wishes for like Street Fighter V to become. So
mm,
what's going on now is you have mostly new players. The fighting game community calls them 16ers because they jumped on the bandwagon in 2016 with Street Fighter V. and and then you have a little bit of the stock of the old players who are seeing fighting games rise to, having all these sponsors and all this money thrown around. But the game itself, Street Fighter V, is not the game at least most of like the hardcore fighting game community wants to lead the esports movement because it's not a game we support. The game is it's been out since February of 2016, so it's been out about a year and a half now, and it's still incomplete.
mm,
It doesn't have that essence of what Street Fighter is. It just has Street Fighter characters in a game that isn't Street Fighter to me. It's very I think what happened there is they wanted to make more people play it. They made it more beginner friendly, but they lost the depth of what fighting games, what separates people who play fighting games for a long time versus people who just pick up fighting games. So
mm.
you lost that middle ground. So now there's no depth to playing the game. So if you look at numbers and you look as far as just overall, people talking around the fighting game, Street Fighter 5 does not have very good cachet among fighting game players, but it does have cachet among people who support esports. Um, so you have that divide. You have the fighting community, and then you have like the esports kind of like suits and tie, you know, who want that game to do well.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I was totally unaware that there's a bit of a divide between
Yeah.
esports and the fighting game community. So where do you see the fighting game community going forward then, now that esports is kind of a threat to what you guys feel like like fighting games should be?
Well, I don't think esports is so much of a threat. I think
Mm,
the game, because Street Fighter has the name Street Fighter and it has
mm,
that cachet behind it and the history and tradition,
mm,
um, people put that game on a pedestal to lead us, right? To lead the fighting game community in esports. But because
mm,
the product itself isn't very good, um, you have other games. Right now, I think in 2017, I think the fighting game landscape, as far as games, is as best as it's ever been because you have King of Fighters 14, which is really good. You have Guilty Gear Xrd, Revelator 2, which is superb, like anime fighting game. You have Blaze Blue series, it's always been solid. And then you have Tekken 7, which in my opinion is the best fighting game on the market right now. I think that game is absolutely superb. So when you're looking at the landscape of fighting games and as far as quality, and then you have on the horizon, you have Blaze Blue coming up with like a cross mix of like it's a game called Under Night and Birth, and then Persona with Blaze Blue, and I forgot that character from what is it called, like RWBY or something like that. And then you have the
mm,
Dragon Ball Fighters, which is I mean, that's as far as a cachet name you'll have Dragon Ball Z in a
mm,
proper fighting game universe. So when you're looking at the landscape, fighting games are thriving as far as quality.
mm,
So what's going on now? Tekken has their own esports circuit, and King of Fighters has their own little esports circuit, and Guilty Gear is trying a little bit with their developer Arc System Works. So you have these little smaller communities within the fighting game community who are doing really good things. It's just because people don't have that name recognition. I mean, Tekken does a little bit, but like if you tell the common man Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue, they don't know what that is.
no.
Um,
I
so
I barely
it's
know
kind of
I
a
barely
divide.
know Blaze Blue. I don't know Guilty Gear. I played Blaze Blue Continuum something back in the day.
Yeah, Continuum Shift.
Yeah, Continuum Shift. Yeah. Uh,
Mm.
the other Guilty Gear I haven't played at all. I played quite a bit of King of Fighters when I was a kid. King of Fighters 2000, King of Fighters 99, 2000, 2001, but mostly
Yeah,
2000. I love 2000. It's one of my favorite games ever.
yeah, it's a good game.
Um, it was so good back in the day. So I tried playing a demo of King of Fighters 13. Yo, I hated that.
Yeah.
It did not feel like King of Fighters, but it seems everybody is more happy with King of Fighters 14. What did they change to make it better?
They made it easier. They
Okay.
made it easier, so more people are playing it. I personally think 13 is like for the last generation, for like the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 generation.
Mm,
I think King of Fighters 13 was the best game, even against Street Fighter 4 and
mm,
Tekken Tag Tournament, Tekken 6. I think King of Fighters 13 was the best overall fighting game
mm.
of last generation, but it was very hard. People, you can pick it up, right? You can play
Yeah,
how you just pick up Street Fighter 5.
casually,
That
yeah.
game was not
Mm,
easy, yeah. So that's why people, I think, were turned off by it. But me, as a fighting game fanatic, I love that fighting games are hard, even though I can't play them.
mm.
I love that there's depth to that. That there's only that guy can do that combo, right? So if he does it and he lands it, I mean, good on that guy because that was hard to do.
Mm.
Whereas, if it's something that's super easy and anybody can do it, then where is the scaling as far as who is actually good versus who is, kind of working off of a sort of flow chart? If I press X, then Y follows.
Okay, so there are people who like just learn strings of things.
Yeah. And
In
yeah, basically.
Okay, so like, how many different types of like fighters do you get? I mean, fighting game players. Like, what are the common types of play styles that you get?
Well, you would have, so let's take a look at like the casuals, right? The casuals,
Mm,
you have the guy that doesn't block lows, right? So you can abuse that because he's always standing. And then you have the button masher who doesn't care about what you're doing. He just wants to put as many buttons out there as possible, and hopefully some of them land.
mm.
Which sometimes, if you're not careful, those guys will really mess you up
Yeah,
because they're so unpredictable.
that's how I
Um,
get killed. My friend Ryan, he button mashes, and like the only way I can defend against it is using like projectile attacks. But once it gets close
yeah,
to me and starts button mashing, I'm finished. And sometimes you can turn
yeah.
around the match like just like that.
So against those players, you really have to know what is safe and what is unsafe, so you know
Mm,
what to punish, right? So you can't
mm,
use that move because, by the time you're able to block, I can already push you back. So,
mm.
and then when it comes to like a more intermediate level, which is where I think I am, um, you have players who know spacing, right? So they know I can't throw out this move because I know he has a certain move that can really do some damage and reverse momentum. And then you have other play styles like the turtle, right, who won't approach. He'll just stay back and wait for you to do something so you can counter, kind of like a counter striker. And then you have just the absolute rushdown monster who, doesn't like playing defense, just wants to go up there and poke, 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 and then hopefully land. And so he can get a big combo and then push you into the corner and just keep you in there. And then the highest level, which is the pro level, and then you get to like esports, right? Like the highest fighting game players. That's when it becomes science, where you have frame data. This move is -7 on block, so I can punish with a move that can punish that move. They know different setups, so if you knock you down, he can cross you up on which side, and it looks ambiguous. And then they have just the clutch factor of and reactions, and everything that puts them over the top as far as the knowledge of not only their character but your character, and the knowledge of like different stages and the overall meta of the game, of what the game allows you to do. Like certain games have vertical jumping, certain games have sidestepping, certain games have corners, others don't. So just putting that all together is what really puts like those players at the top, and that's what makes them so hard to beat because they're so composed, they're so well rounded, and they don't get rattled. At least most of them don't get rattled.
Is playing like too many different fighting games like does it make you less good at particular games because they are so different sometimes?
um yeah, but there's also kind of like I would say sometimes it's really good to play multiple fighting games because you
Mm,
get like a different like experience, a different thinking of,
mm.
let's say, because I really like Tekken, right? So I'll play Tekken a lot, and that's a 3D game, meaning there's sidestepping
You
movement.
can sidestep, yeah.
So if I'm playing Tekken, I think differently, right? So let's say I've lost, which this has happened a lot of times. I've lost a bunch of matches in Tekken because I'm not I'm not doing well for whatever the reason. It's always good to sometimes either take a break or just go play something else. Which for me, like I'll go play Street Fighter 4, or I'll go play King of Fighters, or an anime game or whatever, and just kind of get my mind off of it, right? Even if I'm not really just trying to be the best at that game, I just want a different type of tempo. And then I'll go back to Tekken, and then my mind is kind of reset, and I am kind of a little more composed, and now I can think a little clearer. It just gives you a good different perspective. But I think if you try to be the best at every single fighting game is out, you'll eventually you'll spread yourself too thin, and you'll see that is not going to be a good result. A good example is that just happened at Evo. You said you don't know about Guilty Gear, but Guilty Gear is a game that is, when it comes to anime games, I think it's the hardest anime game to learn because it's very too many intricacies for it to just for someone to pick up. And there was a really good Japanese player who got, I think he won Evolution 2016 last year. And he said at the beginning of the tournament, which I don't have to put too much time in Guilty Gear because I already know that I'm really good. I'm going to put some more time into Street Fighter because the pop bonus, if I get top 8 at Street Fighter, or if I get top 3, that's a lot more money than if I play Guilty Gear, which he said, I already have Guilty Gear in the bag. He didn't even make top 16 in Guilty Gear, I don't believe. He lost in like the second round of pools because he was trying to put, a lot of eggs in Street Fighter V's basket and kind of relying on his personal talent instead of practicing in Guilty Gear. So you really have to make the choice of what fighting game you want to dedicate yourself to and really focus on that. And then if you're struggling a little bit, it's good to go see other avenues, but make sure you're focused on really what you want to do.
Yeah, I would suspect that. Yeah, if you're trying to be specifically good at certain type of fighting game, you have to put everything into it.
Yeah.
But I feel maybe when you're starting up, you should probably try different stuff. I don't know, just to wrap your mind around different things. That's how I would go about it if I started up. I just play a bunch of different stuff,
Yeah.
and then maybe pick one that I was somewhat goodish at, and then learn the intricacies.
Well, I always say that for fighting games, play whatever you enjoy. I mean, if you're playing a bunch of games and you're good at one, but you don't like playing it, stop playing it. Play the one that you have fun with, and then go from there, which is where I think everybody should start with. Unless you're chasing esport money and Street Fighter 5 has the highest pop bonus, then I guess you got to play Street Fighter 5. But if you're just a casual like me and you just like playing because of the competitive nature or because it's fun, yeah, just play whatever you enjoy and then put everything else to the side.
Yeah, I'm one of those idiots who plays fighting games for the story.
You're not alone. There's a bunch of people, and we need those people too because those people buy the games and they make fighting games.
But I feel
as far as charting.
Yeah, but I feel like we're getting like we're getting thought of less and less by the developers. I feel like because I feel like the story modes, they're getting shorter and they're getting less like interesting. So I haven't bought a fighting game in a long time. I think the last one.
Yeah.
Well, aside from like the Naruto Storm series, I buy every one of those ones. But aside from that and other anime ones, I think the last one was probably Tekken 6. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Maybe Street Fighter 4 came out before that, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh no, Street Fighter 4, Tekken 6 came before Street Fighter 4, I believe.
Oh, then probably Street Fighter 4 was the previous one, and that one had like okay stories. Some of them were weird, but it was very like short and okay. The anime type of cutscenes were cool, but I really felt like okay, this is if you wanna play games for the story, fighting games are not the type of things to play anymore.
Yeah, I think there are certain developers that do a really good job, like NetherRealm Studios.
Yeah. So
they'll do like Mortal Kombat, Injustice. They're really good with their story mode.
Yeah. That's
but the
true.
rest, they kind of just put more into like the gameplay of it. Like Tekken sometimes does a pretty good story mode, but if you're playing like Street Fighter or you're playing like King of Fighters, for the most part, just be a little cutscenes, and then it's all about the gameplay.
Yeah. King of Fighters 2000, I remember like playing through because each team had their own like storyline.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool going through that, and then sometimes they had like all of these like secret type of missions, especially with like Kula. I don't know, is that the girl's name? Kula.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, sometimes she would secretly come in if you did something cool. So
Hmm.
it was cool, like figuring out those type of stuff. Do they have those type of things in the games these days, where like if you, because I know Mortal Kombat used to do this quite a bit, but they had like it built into the game where you could like input certain codes at the fight screen back in the day, and then you'd get certain characters like Goro or whatever. But is that something that's starting to like die down now? Now that they focus more on the gameplay, or is it? Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, you'll see, especially with King of Fighters games, you'll see a lot of Easter eggs, like in certain scenarios or certain stages, because they're
Mm.
really good about stuff like that. 13 was really good with that. But as far as actually inputting to get like a secret something, yeah, that pretty much died out. I don't know of a fighting game that has done that in quite a while.
In a long time. Okay, only 90s kid remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're playing a lot of Tekken 7 at the moment.
Yeah.
What makes Tekken 7 that good?
Um, it's it's one of the fighting games that I've had the most fun learning. So there's a certain and I'm guilty of this too, right? A lot of people when they lose, they get mad, they get salty, and they don't even want to think about it. The thing that makes Tekken 7 special for me is because I've played previous Tekken games, but wasn't very good at them, and because of the Persona series, I didn't dedicate as much time to Tekken as I probably should have. But now because there is no other game that interests me as much as Tekken 7, I really enjoy playing it. So what happens now, whether I win or whether I lose, I constantly think about why, like what happened for me to get this result. And the game is very good about with its training mode and as far as kind of teaching you through playing instead of giving you like instructions is okay, you can't do this because of that, and you can do this, and this results with this. And it's just very fun. It's very fun to find out like how this tree actually connects to, get all the way to the top. And I think that's fascinating. I don't think there's a game right now that does that better as far as teaching you through playing. It's fascinating to me because, fighting games are so humbling, right? I'll be on a 7 fight winning streak. I'm like, I'm untouchable right now. And then somebody else will come in and absolutely wreck me for 3 straight games.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, how did that happen? It must be his character. Like, no, it's like he obviously countered what I was doing. So now got to go to training mode, figure out what he was doing and how do I counter that strategy. And that's where the layers kind of stack up on top of each other. And I think it's fighting it. It's as deep as a game can get, and it's probably the biggest compliment you can give a fighting game, where it's fun to learn and it has extreme depth. That's what you want.
Mm. Yeah, I've always seen Tekken as one of those intricate things. Also, geez, what is the other one that you can sidestep in? The one with
Well, you have
weapons.
Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur. Yeah,
Uh,
I love Soul Calibur. That one,
yeah, that's a really good game too.
the guy with the bow staff, he was my guy. I used to
Yeah.
always play with him. Jeez, what was his name? Damn it. I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot. I'm not very well
Yeah,
versed in Soul Calibur. I haven't
I
played
get
that game as much.
amnesia when I think about characters' names for some reason. What are your favorite like characters over the years? What are your like go-to type of guys?
As much as like it'll sound kind of corny, but I really like main characters in games. Even if they're not my specific main, I like playing them because I think they're usually very solid and they're very kind of well-rounded, even if they're not the best character. Sometimes they are the best character, but so you'll have like obviously Ryu from Street Fighter. I always enjoyed playing Ryu because it's fundamentals as far as, making sure you can't jump on him, and then he has projectiles. It's just a fun play style for me. Um, and then you have like Kazuya from Tekken, which I
Mm.
think he's a very difficult character to play, but I think he's very fun to play. And as far as like Persona games or whatever, I've played like Yu Narukami, who's actually the main protagonist in Persona 4. Um, there's a robot android girl called Labris. I used to play her. She was actually my main character. And right now, I'm playing a lot of King of Fighters 14 and Tekken 7. So I'm playing kind of a mix teams. And I haven't found my team in King of Fighters 14 just yet. I know that I like King and Joe Higurashi in there. I still don't know who the third character is going to be in. And then
King
and
is
Tekken
cool.
right
Yeah.
now, yeah, I really like King. And Tekken, I'm playing Lily, because I've always played Lily in every Tekken game.
Lily, which one is Lily?
Lily is she's like the tall blonde. She's kind of like a gymnast, ballet, Street Fighter type style.
Okay. Okay, I think I can picture. There's way too many characters in all these games
Yeah.
to keep track of. I remember in King of Fighters, I really liked Clark, who was the
Mm.
grappling type, and
Yep.
Ralph, who punches a lot.
Yeah.
His team, I can't remember who the third on his team was. But also I liked the Kenso. He like he likes kicking stuff.
Hmm.
Jeez. And then when it comes to Street Fighter, I think I think I actually don't like playing with any of the mains for some reason. I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
maybe
A lot of people don't.
my non-conformist type of
Yeah.
behavior that I've had for all of these years. But I think, geez, when it comes to Street Fighter, E Honda, I think I played with the most because you could just spam his like thing.
His hand slap,
Yeah, with one, and then you could do the chart. The what is that?
the headbutt.
How do people even? How can you fly like that? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I used
I
to,
know.
I used to do that. Mortal Kombat. Jeez, I don't even. Who do I used to play with this Mortal Kombat? Probably Scorpion the most. He's the most popular
Yeah. Actually,
guy.
Mortal Kombat is the one game I don't play the main characters. I try
Mm,
to play, like Mortal Kombat 10. I played Cassie Cage and Johnny Cage.
mm, Cassie Cage was interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I don't like Johnny Cage for some reason. I don't
A
play
lot of
with
people don't.
I don't play with him often. But Mortal Kombat is one of those games that just has like such a rich like history. There's
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat is actually like so ingrained into game like history, just in general. Like they were responsible for
Yeah.
creating like the rating system that we have now
Yep.
because it was
Mhm.
so. Yeah, because it's just like the whole thing was like just to be as as nasty as they could with being
Yeah.
gratuitous with the violence. So Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat's
And
actually
that's
quite
still the thing
interesting.
that kind of appeals to people now.
Yes, and it's pretty cool that they've actually kept it going for so long, and like the games are like so
Yeah.
quality still.
Yep.
And that team making Injustice as well, that game's also pretty cool. I don't know
Yeah.
how popular is Injustice with the fighting game community.
Um, it's popular, but you have, again, the fighting community is so layered because you have kind of a divide between the fighting community. So you
Mm,
have your mainstream Street Fighter fans, and then you'll have your kind of like subgenre and like the anime fighting fans.
mm,
And then you'll have what you call the NetherRealm fans, which they play NetherRealm games. They'll play Mortal Kombat and they'll play Injustice. And the thing that puts all those things together is just the system of those fighting games. Each fighting game follows kind of a different system where it's unique to that game, right? So obviously Street Fighter with its fundamentals. Anime gives you a little more leeway because you have extreme vertical jumping, you can air block. Um, there's a lot of things to keep up with. It's higher, it's faster paced. NetherRealm games are a little bit stiff, and there's a block button, right? So there are no cross ups. It's more about who can land the most chip damage, who can land the overhead when you're blocking low, and who can land the low attack when you're blocking high. And that's basically where it kind of rotates, right?
mm,
So if you're not into that meta of playing that game that way, then NetherRealm games aren't going to be for you because as far as like the movement and the overall, I guess, execution for it, it won't appeal to somebody that like me who enjoys the freedom of playing like anime fighting games. But within the NetherRealm community, Injustice, especially Injustice 2, is doing very well. And Mortal Kombat actually did very well for as long as that game was going on. It's just the fact that NetherRealm, their games cannibalize each other. So if Injustice 2 comes out, as a result, Mortal Kombat X is going to die. And that's unfortunate,
mm.
but that's just how that community runs.
Mortal Kombat X was interesting. I didn't notice it coming out. Like one day there wasn't Mortal Kombat X, and then one day they just was, and it was like released 2 months ago. I was like, it just came out of nowhere. I don't know whether like the promotion on that was a bit lighter than with previous games.
Yeah.
Because I remember like 9, like you knew, like I knew when 9 was coming out,
Yeah.
but X just
Well, that
came
was
out
a
of
big
nowhere.
thing because that was like a nine was like a like a revamp of like the old school Mortal Kombat. They didn't even call it Mortal Kombat 9. They just called it Mortal Kombat.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Whereas with
yeah.
X is, that was more for I thought they did actually a really good job with X, especially
Mm.
with like the characters. I thought the character select screen was very diverse,
Mm.
and they did a good job of bringing in new cast members and then still bringing in like the old favorites. And then they've done a really good job with their downloadable content. Their modeling as far as like how they pack things in, um, and they're very good at that type of stuff. But it depends on kind of like what games you like and what characters you like playing.
Yeah, no, it's cool to play for me once in a while because those sports story modes are cool.
Yeah, they
Um,
really are.
so what other stuff are you watching or reading now beside fighting games at the moment?
Um, not not much. I don't know. I wish I would be more active as far as at least reading manga. I want to, but I don't know.
Mm.
There's just something that like the keeps me away from it for some whatever reason. I don't know why. And I've talked to this on my podcast with my buddy, who he's like I call him my anime guy because he's always texting me about what's good, what's not, and
Mm.
all this stuff, and he kind of keeps me updated. And it's been like this for I think about a year, where I
Mm.
haven't had like the inkling to read or watch anything really, and I don't know what it is. The only thing that I do watch is, or that I read is, I buy like the One Punch Man like volumes. I
Mm.
really like those. I think they're great.
No, those are quality. One Punch Man's
Yeah.
quality. Yeah.
So the next one comes out in September. I'll read that when that comes out. But as far
Mm.
as anything else, I
Yeah.
haven't really had
Yeah.
the urge.
I'm in a similar situation. I think. We mentioned it earlier, but I think when One Punch Man season 2 comes out, I think then my anime watching might go up again. And I think in the
Yeah.
same season, Shokugeki no Soma 2 season 3 is coming out, which is that anime about food. I don't know if you know it. It
Oh,
is
that's like isn't that like food porn?
food wars. It is food porn, I suppose.
Yeah.
It also did start up with a lot of fan service as well.
Uh,
So maybe that's what you're thinking about. But that declined over time as the story got
Oh,
better.
really?
Yes, and the story got really cool and the characters got really interesting. And then I think they were like, okay, we don't need the fan service as much anymore, so they cut down on it, which is pretty interesting for like anime because what I saw over the years was that anime was starting off when it would like, either putting focus on the characters or the fight or the story, and then over
Yeah.
time I think as the audience got older, then they started doing a lot more fan service. It happened with like Fairy Tale, it happened with One
A lot.
Piece,
Yeah.
it happened with Kenichi History's Strongest Disciple. Kenichi History's Strongest Disciple got hectic. Like there was almost like borderline like pedophilia, like pornography at the end.
Oh gosh.
It was crazy. Like I was reading it one time and my friend walked on me and he thought I was like reading like pedophilia porn. I was like, no, this is just like
Jesus.
it's just like a normal manga. It was weird. So it's interesting that Shokugeki no Soma went the other way because it's like in terms of characters and like story, it's actually really good. And
Yeah.
it's weird because it's about like making food the whole time, but
Yeah.
it's built in that usual like shonen like battle type of way. They just like battle through making
Okay.
making food. So I'm keen for that, and I think when that pops up and when One Punch Man pops up, I think I'll get back into it. But yeah, right now I'm feeling you with that. There's nothing that sparks that interest. It's like
And you know what? The my buddy, I remember we've been waiting for so long for the Attack on Titan season 2,
mm,
and it came out, and I haven't seen a single episode of it because
no.
I had I just didn't feel like it was too late. I don't know.
It was
I
too
didn't want
late. Yeah, I think they released it just on the tail end of excitement levels. And I read the manga past probably season 2 anyway, so I wasn't keen on watching Attack on Titan season 2,
Yeah.
and so I didn't watch
But
any.
let me ask you actually, now that you mentioned it, I think that when it comes to fan service, that's like a big thing for me where I like anime and I like manga as far as like the art and the
Mm,
narrative and stuff. But the one thing that I kind of, I don't know, that I don't like is everything else that comes with it. It's like not that everybody is like this, but like, the stereotypical otaku type culture of like fan service and
mm.
um, just I don't know, like you know what I'm talking about, like the stereotypical anime fan.
Yeah,
If like my
yeah,
mom
yeah.
would point
The
them out,
the
right?
ones that are like fighting on the front lines of the waifu wars and stuff like
Exactly,
that.
right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
everybody likes a good waifu war, but when you have, an
yeah,
entire message board dedicated to it, then you
yeah.
probably should chill out for a second.
Yeah.
But I think that when it comes to fan service, while there is an audience for it, especially for me, because, I'm growing a little bit older. Not that I'm super old, I'm only about 24, but like I think I don't know, it kind of loses something for me when I see fan service in an anime.
Mm,
Not that it's so much as it discredits it, but it just there's something lost there. You know what I'm saying? It's just I
mm,
don't know how to
mm,
point it
mm,
out.
mm. Yeah, no, I definitely understand. And I think it comes from my preference for like story first.
Yeah,
When I see like unnecessary fan service, it's giving me the impression that you are not putting the story first. Because
yes,
if you put the story first, you are being serious about this being a narrative progression for the person who's interested in the development of the story and the development of the characters. So
yes, exactly.
when the stories do, fall down the toilet and then everything just becomes, fan service, and like when girls are fighting, all of a sudden their clothes are disintegrating and stuff like that,
I
I
know.
really do get put off. That's why I stopped watching Fairy Tale. It's it's when you, especially like, I think it's because you and I also like, you review like video games or you write about video games, so you look
Yeah.
at them at a very critical like sort of way. And
Hmm.
I was also like reviewing manga and anime and stuff at some point, and when you see stuff like fan service, it's just, when you look at it critically, it's kind of even more spotlighted, because when you
Yeah.
watch that type of stuff, like just like to relax, or like just like to, you just like sit back on your couch and you just watch, and you turn your brain off. I think
Yeah.
it's not that hectic, because you don't like, it happens for that 30 seconds and then it carries
Hmm.
on. But then, when you see it happening over and over again, and then it happens at the expense of the story, at the expense of the narrative, at the expense of the dialogue, then it becomes annoying, and then you turn me off to it. And that's why I actually didn't want to watch Food Wars for a long time, because I had seen the promos and like the trailers and everything, and like you could see like it was just like a bunch of like, girls like having orgasms after eating like food. And then
Yeah.
my roommate was like, no, you gotta watch it, it's really good, you gotta watch it. And eventually, like, I crumbled, and then I watched it, and like, sure enough, the first episode was just full of fan service, but as it went on, it got better. But I definitely, it's something that I tackled. Me and my roommate actually talked about it on our anime podcast back in the day. I think it's on the channel. We had an entire episode dedicated to an anime fan service, and it's just something that, it's worrying, because it's become such a staple now in the anime and manga industry.
Yeah.
um and it's not, it's something that's making, it's, in my personal opinion, I think it's making anime going mainstream more difficult, because you can't
Yeah.
penetrate certain markets if you're putting your, if your best foot forward is that type of like imagery and like, that type of message. It's not going to penetrate to a lot of markets, because for one, anime and are seen in a lot of places as like just cartoon, like for kids,
Yeah.
cartoons. So like the parents are going to cause a whole bunch of issues with it if they say their kids watching all of this weird stuff. And some cultures just don't appreciate that type of stuff. This is like it's definitely like a Japanese type of culture thing. And I feel
Hmm.
like that's why like manga sales and anime sales are like going. That's why they aren't making as much money as they should be able to, because they can't penetrate all of these markets. And it's worrying to me because when you hear stories about like how all of these animators are like working like they're falling asleep at the office because they're working like
Yeah.
these
Insane
20
hours.
20 hours days, and like some of them are like having to go to the hospital for exhaustion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. Like I don't want any series or whatever to just go off the air because some of the staff died or whatever like that. You don't want to hear
Yeah.
those stories. It's crazy. But this also is like happens in like fighting games and stuff as well, because like
Yeah.
I remember like I've seen like a few like trailers of like Street Fighter, and some of those female characters, they are dressed in a very like weird way, like over sexualized. And
Yeah.
I'm like, they are supposed to be fighting, like
Mhm.
you would expect, like I would expect, as somebody who's like dabbled in martial arts for a long time, like you can't just dress any way and expect to like win like a fight.
Yeah.
Like sometimes like if you have like weird like I don't know, if you have like long hair, that's a potential like a weakness, because somebody could pull it. If you have like weird like just pieces of clothing that are just like dangling and like long, there's all like potential ways of like getting you know it's all potential weaknesses that you have unless you train for it in some potential
Yeah.
way. And it's the same type of like weird thing that I have when it comes to like the fantasy medieval stuff and like female armor. It's like
Yeah.
you're not protecting any
No,
of
it's
your
not covering anything.
organs. And, it's a really weird thing that we have in geek culture, that we have this idea. I don't know whether the developers have this idea that females have to always look, I don't know, fuckable all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's
Basically.
I mean, like
And Street Fighter Five is not has not done a very good job of that because of
yeah.
most of those Street Fighter characters have always been overly exaggerated.
Mm,
But I think the cast of Street Fighter Five, except for maybe there's like two characters I can think
mm,
of, but that's because they're severely underaged in Ibuki and Aaron, which I think they're both like 16. So thank
mm,
God they're not, overly sexualized. But the
yeah,
rest of them, they're so, first of all, they're scantily clad, a lot of them. Um, and they're just the proportions are so, crazy that it
weird.
doesn't make sense. Where Street Fighter 4, you had a little bit of it, but not nearly as what Street Fighter 5 has. And that's why I don't I technically it is a fighting game, but I don't consider it a fighting game, and that is the Dead or Alive series, right? Because that is a fighting game for people
Oh,
who don't want
jeez.
to play fighting games. That's a
Yeah,
fighting game for people who want to look at little girls almost
yeah.
naked.
That's a fighting game for the people who buy like fan servicey stuff all the time.
Basically.
Who buy
Yeah.
those those boob mouse pads and like those
Oh gosh.
the waifu pillows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
More power to those people for like contributing to the anime industry. But that stuff's kind of weird. It's like
Yeah. It is.
um it's crazy. And like I don't know, like I've always had this idea that it cheapens the whole like experience for me. that
Yeah,
that
you hit the nail on the head right there.
yeah, it's it's a sad thing, but it's
But
also like,
that's a reason why. Go ahead.
well, I forgot what I was gonna say, so you go ahead.
Sorry. What was I going to say was that's another reason why I think I kind of separated from anime and went to manga is because while you still have a lot of fan service in manga, you can pinpoint a lot of times which series is going to have what, and because it's they don't have to stall for time. There's less of it with reading versus watching. So that's why I kind of like that, where I can kind of, understand, okay, so this series is probably going to be like this, and there's going to be less fan service than this one. Versus if it were an anime, it's kind of unpredictable because they have, you have whatever the 19 minutes that you have to fill. A lot of it is going to be, certain shots that probably shouldn't even be there.
Mm. Yeah, I think what I was going to say is when it comes to Japan, they culture when it comes to sexuality is very different. So I think
Yes.
why like fan service is so like popular there is because they do it in such a way that it can appeal to like a wide range in age groups,
Hmm.
because they treat sexuality different there. Um, but that does not translate when it leaves Japan, and I think that's where the problem is, because you essentially you're keeping your market very contained. And I've had a lot of arguments online with people about this, because I'm very worried about like Japan's like anime and manga industry. It's not scalable to the level that you know Netflix is or like HBO is, because
Yeah.
they don't do it in a way to where the whole or there's an audience throughout the world that can enjoy it. Um, and it's
And
sad.
we've seen success with it too.
Mm,
Like Spirited Away. I mean, that's perfect. That one,
yeah,
that was great everywhere, but you have to,
yeah,
I
and
don't know, maybe.
it's interesting because that's like that happens once in a while where something like that goes like viral, to put it
Mhm.
in air quotes. But the fact of the matter is that all of that other weird stuff, that's the type of stuff that's paying for all of the other anime.
Yeah.
It's actually the fan servicey stuff that's paying for all of the good stuff coming out. So it's like a necessary evil. But it's such a
Yeah.
weird situation. Like it's weird. I don't know. I think we brought the energy of this whole podcast down with talking about fan service.
Yeah.
It's normally something people love so much, but me it just
Yeah.
pisses me off. It just pisses
Yeah,
because
I mean, I don't mind it. I just want it in a certain place and time where it's appropriate, but not everywhere.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't have any problem against those like series that are just fan, like they made for fan service,
Yeah.
because then
I
I
mean, do
just
your
don't
thing.
have to watch it. Like I can just be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not watching this. But when the other series that I watched for a long time just devolve into it, then I'm like, okay, now you're pissing me off, because like I had watched this series for 100 episodes, I had invested all of this time, and now you're
Yeah.
suddenly changing the tone just because your sales are going to increase. That's anti art.
Yeah.
That's going corporate. And I don't like
Yeah.
going corporate unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so I think it's about time to go into our rapid fire round, which is a
Sure.
series of questions that I ask people to see which one of these things impacted their lives more. Ready, Randy?
Yeah.
Okay, Star Trek or Star Wars?
Um, I don't know much about either, but I would say Star Wars because
Star
I've been
Wars.
around people who know about it.
Okay, so I think Star Wars has much more of an impact on geek culture in general. So,
Mm, yeah.
Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings.
Um, I'm not huge into both, but I like them both. If I had to choose one, I would say Lord of the Rings. I think it has pretty interesting kind of tales.
Do you prefer fantasy over sci-fi?
Um, no, it doesn't really matter. I prefer quality, and I really like it had a very cool. I thought it was a little long as far as the movies because I never read the books. But I like the stories of Lord of the Rings a little bit better. With Harry Potter, I think there's just so many of them that they kind of all just jumble together, and I
Mm,
can't keep track. I think there's like 8 movies, right? So,
mm.
um,
It's
yeah,
it's a saga. Batman or
yeah,
Iron Man?
Batman or Iron Man. I think if I were younger, I'd say Batman, but I would go with Iron Man because I don't know. I think I've been a little bit oversaturated with Batman as far as it comes from every place. You got movies, you got video games, you got
Mm.
comics. He's just been all over the place. So let's give Iron Man some love.
Yeah, yeah. No, I also I love the Iron Man character. I think he's fascinating.
Yeah,
And I was one of those rare breeds who knew Iron Man before the Iron Man movies came out, because he was interestingly enough, one of my favorite characters to play in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in the arcades.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, he was. We didn't touch on Marvel vs. Capcom for some reason. Maybe we'll do that after the rapid fire round.
All right.
Superman versus Spider Man.
I would say Spider-Man only because I grew up watching Spider-Man, the animated series.
Yeah, that's yeah the part of
That was
many
legit.
geeks' upbringing and development.
Yep.
The Spider-Man cartoon. Nathan Drake or Master Chief?
Ooh. Um, that's a tough one.
It is.
I like them both. I think I probably like Master Chief more as a character, but I think Nathan Drake is very entertaining. So that's a tough one. I'll go with Drake, but even though my heart kind of lies with Master Chief.
Okay, yeah, yeah. No, Nathan Drake is hilarious.
Yeah.
Sonic or Mario?
Um, I would go with Sonic, not because the games are better, just because I have more of an attachment to it, because that's what I
Mm,
grew up
mm,
playing.
It had more effect on you.
I know every time you say
Mm.
those two names, people get all crazy. Be like, "How can you pick Sonic over Mario? That's
Yeah.
insane." Like, no, don't get all pissed off. That's what I grew up playing.
Well, I mean, yeah, the premise of the whole rapid fire round is which one of these things had more effect on your life, not
Oh,
necessarily
okay,
better.
yeah,
So it could make sense, especially if you're like a Sega kid and couldn't afford having two consoles at that time, which I wasn't.
yeah,
I had
same
fortunately
here.
fell onto the Sega side, so that's why
Yeah,
Sonic has more effect on my life than Mario.
yep.
Even though, like, for some reason, I am always whistling the Mario tune all the
Really?
time, all the time. Even though I played that game so little in my life, it's just one of those like things that just stick with me. Like if I'm not like listening to music or watching anything, and I'm like doing some work or whatever, that's the first tune that comes to my mind, and I whistle
Really?
it. It's weird. Facebook or Twitter,
Twitter for sure.
Instagram or Snapchat.
I don't have either,
You don't have
so I don't know.
either. You're
Yeah,
still moving in the old school. You haven't
yeah,
come down to where the kids are playing.
yeah. No,
Uh,
not yet.
yeah. So, how pumped are you for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? Are you pumped? Is Marvel vs. Capcom some series that you play?
Uh, yeah, sometimes I played three, but again, I mean, again with this divide of fighting games, right? And I stand on one side, whereas the rest stand, not the rest, but a lot
Mm.
of people stand on another. I don't know if you've seen Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, it's, especially the early footage. The game doesn't
I've
look
just
good.
seen the trailers. Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
What's wrong with it?
The animations are very clunky. They look reused from other games. And then for the generation, right, you have to take everything in retrospect. We're in 2017 and this game is coming out.
Mm,
For the generation, the game aesthetically is not very pleasing.
mm,
And then mechanically, I haven't played it, but it doesn't look too um, too intricate. And it's the fact that it's 2-on-2 and not 3v3. It's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why are you doing something else? And when you
mm,
have a formula that works, and now what you have is people who want Marvel versus Capcom to succeed versus people who are telling the truth and are saying this game has problems and it's not even out. And then you have people who are
mm,
calling those people haters. Well, no, we're just kind of pointing out the facts that we're the consumer. If you want us to buy this game, it's got to be good.
mm,
So what's going on now is you have two games who are similar to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and Dragon Ball Fighters, which is a 3-on-3 tag team game, which looks incredible as far as the
mm,
visual. It takes inspiration from the source material with how it plays, the animation, and then you have the cross battle and like the Blaze Blue, Persona, Guilty Gear, or not Guilty Gear,
mm,
and those other two characters I forget their names, and that looks amazing because mechanically it looks. I mean, that's 2-on-2, and visually and mechanically, it already looks, miles ahead from Marvel versus Capcom. So I just I just kind of try to tell it like it is, and I want Marvel and versus Capcom to succeed, but if it's not a good product, then I'm not going to
Mm,
support it. So right now, I'm not very
yeah,
hyped for it.
that sounds worrying. I didn't know that they switched from a 3-2 model. That's weird.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's sometimes weird when these fighting games just change the format unnecessarily. Like the Storm
Yeah.
series did this over the years. Like I thought like Storm 1 and 2 were like really cool. And then before Storm 3 came out, they had this weird intermediate thing and I just hated it because they didn't do those boss battle things. And the boss
Mhm.
battles in 1 were amazing. And the cutscene stuff from 2 was amazing. I know people don't like quick time events for some reason, but I do
Yeah.
because like I said, I'm a story first guy, so I like to play through that cutscene,
Yeah.
and quick times are fine for me. But when they just decided to make it the next iteration just a fighting game, I couldn't get into that. I was like really pissed off. I still
Yeah.
platinumed it for some reason because I platinumed most of the Storm games. I'm actually behind. I need to get the platinum for the last one. But yeah, like like you said, like if it's not broken, like don't fix it. And like when you're buying a certain series because it's that certain series, and especially like when it comes to fighting games, like mechanics, like yeah, like Marvel versus Capcom does feel like you need a three-player team. It's like
And also, you want characters you want to play, and Marvel vs.
mm,
Capcom Infinite so far has not. I mean, I don't think there are any X-Men in the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite
what?
character
No,
select
okay,
screen.
wait, this suck. Okay, it's starting to suck more and more. now that
Yeah.
now that you talk about it, how can you? There's no Wolverine.
Oh, I Here's the thing. Capcom post Street Fighter V has been a mess. I have no idea what's
Mm,
going on at the headquarters. It's not good. And
mm,
I don't know who's advising them. Well, I do know, but I'm not going to put them on blast. And I don't exactly know what they're thinking at the helm there, but it's not working from the consumer part, right? I don't know how it's going to do monetarily and how it's going to do as far as just a success from selling standpoint. But if you look at the numbers, Street Fighter V has not sold well, and the writing is already on the wall. And we're about 2 months away from the release date, and the writing is already on the wall for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
mm.
So I don't understand what's going on there. I really want them to do better, but if they keep stumbling and then they keep asking for our money, at one point you just have to just leave them behind.
Yeah. I think I'm just gonna play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 again, and,
Yeah,
and
there you go.
not worry about Infinite. I never got to play 3. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was
It's
became
chaotic.
became so rare in this country. I couldn't find one. I was searching for it during the PS3 era for a solid like 3 months, and it was this like golden egg that I could not find. And I never found it until the next gen came out, and then I was waiting for it to come like out on digital for PS4, and it took this long. Like it only came out recently, didn't it? Like
Yeah.
a couple
Yeah,
of months ago
just recently.
at E3, I think they announced it.
Yep.
I went crazy. There was one announcement. I was like, yes, finally get to play this game after all these years. PS3 generation, there was like a lot. There were some like games that only came out on disc, and if they was sold like to certain countries in a limited amount, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was one of them, and it was sad because I couldn't get to play it.
And
But
not to mention the online store for PlayStation 3 was god awful. It was like you couldn't find anything.
yeah, no, PlayStation Store is one of those weird things.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should end it on too much of a negative note. So are you optimistic for anything with the future of the fighting game community and industry on the horizon?
Um, I'm optimistic because I think the games on the horizon are really, really good, and I think that for me, I try not to put too much emphasis on Street Fighter or what Capcom is doing as far as the esports thing because I'm detached from that whole situation. I just like the fact that we have really good fighting games, so the fighting game community proper can play those games. And that's really all I like. But I wanted to ask you a question because you said you're a D&D fan,
Mm.
and I've never played this pen and paper, but I'm really excited for a game called Cyberpunk 2077. I didn't know if you
Oh
heard of it.
yes, Project
So
CD Project Red.
yeah,
I'm now a diehard fan of CG Project Red after playing The Witcher 3.
The Witcher, yeah.
I've put at least 200 hours in it. I've played
So
it
I want
three
you,
times. Okay,
yeah.
what are you gonna
So
ask about Cyberpunk?
So I know Cyberpunk it's modeled after the old pen and paper. And I've been waiting for that game. Just I don't not to release, but like to get some
Mm,
information about that game. And I
yeah,
really hope to see three. We would have gotten something.
yeah,
But we didn't get anything. Like that game
yeah.
has been silent since that
Silent
old
since yeah,
trailer.
yeah. Pretty
Uh,
cool trailer that they had. Yeah,
it's one of the best trailers I've ever seen for a
yeah.
game. And then I really like the way they ended it, where it'll come when it's ready. It didn't say anything.
Mm.
But that trailer was what, 4 or almost 5 years ago now, I think.
It can't be 5 years. 5 years. Jeez,
I think it was like early 2013, I want to say.
can't be. No, maybe 4.
Yeah.
But it's still
It
been
was
a
a long
long
time
time.
ago.
It's still been a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. No. I'm pumped for that game just because I know CG Project Red is one of those studios that they put
They don't put out a bad game.
the players first. You know,
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
true.
also a balance between the source material because when it comes to The Witcher, like Witcher is based on a book series, a Polish book series,
Mhm.
but they stick as true to the source material as they do to providing the consumer with the best product that they can. Because when I opened The Witcher 3, there's a note in it that just thanks you for like just buying the game. And like it came stock standard with like well, did it come stock standard? Did I buy the collector's edition? I don't know, but it came with like the CDs and booklets and like they it seemed like they were just grateful to make the game to begin with,
Yeah.
and just the byproduct of it was they get that everybody else gets to play this game and like it comes through. And I mean, some people got pissed that it wasn't as graphically,
It was so
high
deep though.
high fidelity that it showed like I think in the initial like E3 thing it was
Yeah.
kind of like a Watch Dogs 2 scenario, but it still looked amazing, and the
Yeah.
gameplay and the story and the plot was just amazing, and it was such an immersive game. Like I just sat there and like I played and I played
Yeah.
and I played. So I'm really excited for Cyberpunk. What did you think about it?
I just thought I like the like where it's at as far as like where it's kind of in the future, but it's technically realistic to think that, we could be alive for that to be like the future. So I like where it's placed, where it's not like Mass Effect or something like that, where it's like, well, I mean, I don't know if that's really going to be the case, but 2077 is a cool year because I like the fact that even if you look at the trailer, like the buildings, it's like an old structure and then like a new kind of like new technological structure built on top of it. So you have like the old versus the new. And I just think it's such a cool idea, and I can't wait to hear more about it. But they've been so silent that,
Yeah, no, I'm
yeah,
expecting it to be amazing, and yeah, that point you just brought up is quite interesting because The Witcher was really good at showing us worlds that I lived in. And I think
mhm,
when it comes to futuristic games, you don't really see a lot of that lived in type of thing. Deus Ex did that okay to some degree
yeah,
when it came to, going into the seedy underbellies of those
mhm,
cities. But in other types of futuristic games, everything is so like I don't know, like sterile. When it comes to
yeah. It's kind of
futuristic
like they
stuff.
forget the past a little bit, and they just focus
Yeah,
on the future.
yeah, and that's not something that usually happens,
No,
with human beings. A lot of people tend to
yeah,
grab on, to their past. So I think their take on a future, I'm quite keen for it. I think it's gonna be good. And if
yeah,
they're basing it on like past like role playing games, I expect I expect that to help as well, because some of the things that I love are based on D&D, like Final Fantasy is based on D&D.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy
From
had.
what I heard, though, I heard that before they talked about Cyberpunk, they said, we're going to put out The Witcher 3, we're going to finish the DLC for The Witcher 3. And I didn't even know Gwent was a thing until they announced it. But
Mm,
now that they're done with that, I figured they would put all resources into trying to complete that game as soon as possible, because The Witcher 3 saga is kind of behind them now. So I would hope they would dedicate their time to finishing that.
yeah, I'm hoping that we'll hear something at E3 next year, at the
Yeah.
at the latest. I
Has
don't think.
Gamescom happened yet?
I don't know. I don't remember. Don't remember seeing a Gamescom for a while. I
Yeah.
don't think so. But the next thing on my radar is like PSX. But
Okay.
that's still, when is PSX? Like end of September.
Yeah.
I
I
think
know
so.
they did they have it at the same, wasn't it April last year? Oh no, that was the PlayStation experience, or the Paris Games Week, I think.
Yeah, PSX towards the end of the year, if I remember. I
I
don't
think
know.
so.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just too many of these events happening now. There's
Yeah.
one like every like month, and it's kind of smart though, because especially for the smaller games, because they really get overshadowed like at E3 and the other
Yeah.
big conventions. So, but I also think that they don't really need any of these conventions. Like, I mean, like the internet is just free and open. Like you can just do your own thing anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of them just put out press release. Like Rockstar has never been to a convention ever. They just put
mm,
out a press release and people buy those games, like
yeah, but
hotcakes.
that's Rockstar though. Like
Yeah, that's Rockstar.
they have like a legacy of like people are hungry for that stuff. Like it would be the same if like Valve had to just say tomorrow, like on a random blog post, Half-Life 2 coming in a month. Like people will find
Yeah.
that, and then it will become all of the advertising. The people will do it for them. Like that's what
Yeah.
happens with with the Rockstar.
You know
But
what's crazy about Rockstar is that I remember seeing last year, like the MPD charts, if you ever watched those.
mm,
Um, GTA 5 was still top 10 and like last year. Like it's insane. Like that game
mm,
came out for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in like 2013, right?
mm,
And it
2013,
was
yeah,
still top 10. It was
yeah,
insane that
yeah.
that game just keeps selling.
Yeah, I think yeah they probably got a bump when they remade it for current gen,
For
but I think
Yeah,
the online thing is what's keeping it going, because the online
yeah.
GTA Online
Mhm.
is quite popular, I believe. Like everybody wants
It's
to.
yeah, it's very popular. It's so popular that one of the developers said that they don't know if it's gonna die. So they, as far as like GTA
Mm,
6, they say GTA Online is it's captivating so many people that as far as numbers, because they saw eventually like a decline in GTA 4's online community, but with GTA 5, it's so robust that they're like, we don't know if it's gonna die or if we're gonna have to keep for GTA 6 to succeed.
it's also one of those games that are supported so heavily by the community, in terms of
Yeah.
like mods, in terms of like content creators keep putting out like new content all the time. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
Skyrim refuses to die just because the
Yeah, I know.
community around it is like, just they keep wanting to. I don't know, Skyrim's going to be in our toasters coming 2019. It's going to
Yeah, they
be.
love that game.
Anyway, Randy, it's been amazing talking to you. It's been quite interesting chatting to somebody so clued up about fighting games. And I'm sure I'll have you on again when something interesting in the fighting game industry occurs. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no
And
problem. But I appreciate you having me.
and for everybody at home, do remember to like the video if you did, subscribe to the channel for more geeky chats like this about how geek culture inspires and shapes people's lives. And do remember to always be yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. Otherwise, stay tuned and cheers.